Plums, dehydrated, they're not your grandfather's prunes anymore. Okay, we will get started. I've already gone ahead and gotten some of them prepped for what we're doing today. So what I have here is a bowl of plums that I've washed and then just let set in cold water to just let whatever is going to come off of them come off of them. They're not organic. I do what I can do. So these are the plums that we have. We're going to be doing two different kinds. We're going to be doing slices that are large slices like you would get in a store as a prune. But I don't do them just in half because I've got some fairly large size plums here. I'm going to actually cut them in half and then in half again as a big slice because I don't like the big chunk of it. These aren't like your grandpa's prunes because we're not adding any of the additives and chemicals that they do to prunes that you would normally get at the store. These are just going to be plums that are dehydrated. Yes, technically they're prunes when you do them that way, but you know, we don't have to say that. A prune is one of those words that you don't like. So what I'm going to do with this first batch is I'm going to take the plum and I'm going to just go ahead and use my knife the correct way and just cut it in half. Just go around the entire thing and then I'm going to twist it and it comes right out. Then I'm going to take my knife and pry out this pit because you do not want it. We're just going to pop that out. And then what I do is I go ahead and cut this piece one more time pretty evenly because these are a little more thick than I would like them because these are very large plums. So something else I do that's not required, but it's something I do, is I go through and just kind of score this skin because like with berries, I like to keep the skin broken some. It helps it shrink a little better and it helps moisture escape regardless of how you're doing this. Then when I load them onto my trays, I always do it with a cut side up. The reason being, if you're choosing to do it on a solid sheet, like if you're using a fruit leather tray and you put this cut side down on that and you have the skin on top, what you're doing is trapping moisture within that sheet because it's not really allowing that moisture to escape efficiently. So you should always do them cut side up, especially if you're going on fruit leather trays. So because that's what I like to do, I make sure that I do these this way on every tray, no matter what. Oh, did I cut that skin? I did. Okay. So these are going to be the larger pieces that are kind of like prunes that I'm going to do. And I like to make sure that my plums are fairly ripe when I do this because the flavor is better. But you can't make sure that all of your plums are ripe at the same time because it's just the way that commercial fruit works. So some may be really ripe, some may not be that ripe, but they're still going to taste good. You can always soak these in a little honey and water before you do this. If your plums aren't terribly ripe, but you still want to do this, but I just don't. I just make sure they're pretty ripe. All right, so let's get our last one. I'm going to score the skin a bit and then finish loading this tray. What I'm doing next is my favorite way of having these treats, okay? What I like to do is kind of peel these like I do an apple. It takes a little while to do it, but I will just sit here and peel this skin off because I prefer this next version of what I'm going to do without the skin. It's a texture thing for me. I just prefer it that way. Now I'm sure that you could do these as a quick blanch like you would do peaches when you're getting them ready to can. By blanching them really quickly and the skin peels off a little easier. But I was just going to show you how this is how I do it because I don't have enough of these to bother with the blanching. And as soon as I finish, I'll show you what I'm doing for the next step. Okay, my next step. Ooh, got off the last of that at the top. Ooh, took a little too much of the flesh out, but that's okay. I'm just going to go through here and slice these just like this. I'm making probably 1/4 inch slices, maybe it's a little more, and then I'm going to pop one out and place it on my tray. I'm using the cleanest green tray on my Nesco. If I was using my Excalibur, I would use the regular mesh sheets too, but you can also use any of the solid sheets or your fruit leather sheets or whatever you'd like to use. I just sit here and go and slice until I get all the slices that I want, and then I'm going to dry these slices. And I'm telling you, I love the flavor of this. If you've ever had plum jelly, which is one of my favorite jellies because I love and it is super sweet, but I love the taste of it. This turns out to be a lot like plum jelly to me. So here I have my slices. I'm just going to go ahead and start putting these on my tray. And I'm going to do an entire tray of just these slices, because what makes these perfect for me is they are little bite sizes of plum that are super sweet, that taste really good. I'm going to do this one differently because I'm on camera, because it just works out that way. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to just start slicing this way. Now you can easily do this with the skin on, okay? It makes it go a lot faster. It's less work to have to peel the skin off, and it tastes just the same. I am just a texture person and prefer that I don't have the skin on. Now this does work better with a plum that is very ripe compared to like this one is not quite so much as the first one that I just did. But remember that flavors concentrate when you dehydrate, so the sweetness will come out more so as a dried piece than if you had it raw like this. I mean, if you had it just like this. What I might do is the inner circle, because I have to be cute. The inner circle will be the not peeled. The outer circle will be the peeled, because the rest of my family is fine with the skin. I'm just not. I'm picky that way. All right, let me finish up this tray and I'll be back with you in just a minute. See? Isn't that pretty? Now, what can you do with the scraps? You can dry these scraps and make, some plum powder. You can do, whatever you might normally do with your scraps. You can compost these. We're going to give a little bit to our rabbit, but they will probably just be dried and set aside for the next batch that I do, so that when I powder them, I have enough to powder at once. I've not actually ever done plum powder before, but I'm looking forward to it to see what it's like, to add to the same things I would add to add any other fruit powder to. Yogurts, oatmeals, muffins, whatever. Okay, I don't have enough to bother doing it this time, so I'm just going to go ahead and dry these, and that's all I'm going to do with them at this point. Happy birthday again. Do I have to say it 50,000 times today?
Today, yes.
So So here's the solid sheet that I'm going to use. I'm just going to put this here and I'm going to spread these out. These will take a little longer to dry because they're on this sheet as compared to a regular screen, but I'm fine with that. They're just going to sit and dry as the rest of the fruit dries, and then I'll store them away. Okay, as I go to load this, what I'm going to do is put the solid tray on the bottom. That way it'll catch whatever drippings happen and I don't have it all the way through the machine. Then, each of my slices, it's going to be the skin slices, the unpeeled slices, and then the larger pieces for the prune type plum that's dried. Okay, so that's the order I'm going with them first because I'm using a Nesco, which is a top-down fan. This one. And so for the first portion of this, I want the thicker slabs that are the half pieces to have the most drying time next to the fan as possible to make this a more efficient dry. So what I'm going to do is set this at 135 to dry for up to 14, 16 hours, depending on how thick you've cut your slices, your machine, the humidity in your home. It may take me a little longer. I'll let you know when I'm done how long it took me, but that's where we're going to set this for, and we'll get started on it now, and I'll get back to you when we're done. Okay, we're ready to check. It is early in the morning on the next day, and I apologize for the light. We have morning light, but it's also very cloudy, and my light here in the laundry room is kind of yellow, so it doesn't look the best light. So I've just turned the machine off. These have been going for almost, let's see, I'm gonna look at the clock real quick. They've been going for about 22 hours. So I wanted to make sure they're good and dry. So this is what they look like after I've scored the skin. You're going to see some of them have that, but this is basically what it looks like. This is not like a real plum. I shouldn't say a real plum because these are real plums. This isn't like what you would get as a prune in the store because we don't like the big chunk of it, but these come out a lot thicker. They're going to be chewier, but the thing that you don't do is just take these off of the counter, out of the machine right now and say they're done. I'm going to put them in a storage container and we're finished. You need to wait and let these cool off first. They need to be completely cool. Then you test them. If at that point you have a dry, leathery, but pliable, meaning there's some movement to it, but it's not like, I wouldn't say it's completely bendy, but it also isn't brittle. That's what you want for a dried plum. So for these slices, which is what I prefer, they are going to be a little crispy by the time we're finished, but this is what they look like coming right out of the machine. Then here are the ones without the peel on the sides. I peeled them so there's no skin. There, you can see I didn't flip them because I didn't feel like I needed to, so they are completely dry. There's that. Then here are the peels and the extra bits left over. When I am sure that these are completely dry, I'm just going to store them for the next batch of plums that we do, and then I will probably powder these. Okay, these have had about 15-20 minutes to just sit and dry. Sit and warm up. So I wanted you to see what they look like when they're all finished and done. These, pretty crispy. They don't completely break, but they don't just shatter, but they do break. They are dry. They are leathery to the touch. They're not wet at all. The same goes for these slices. They're the exact same way. This is what you want if you're going to store these. Now you can let them be a little softer if you just want to snack on them, but remember that you have to store them in the refrigerator or the freezer because they're not completely dry when they're soft, so they will go bad. You still need to eat them within 4 or 5 days of being in your refrigerator, but that's what it looks like. It is completely dry, it's leathery, it will break easily when I bend. These are good. The same will be for this. They are dry, they crinkle, they are completely dry. However, we run into this issue. Now, when you're looking at these, they look like plums. They are leathery, they are dry, they are pliable, but because they're thicker, and because I was using some large plums, this may be a little different when you use smaller ones, but even after all this time, when I opened up where I had split these, I noticed, you can see right here, they are still a little wet on the inside. So here's what happens with case hardening, which is why I cut slits into the skin when I was drying these to make sure they were fully dry. Doesn't mean you can't eat this, you just need to eat it quickly. Case hardening is when you have a piece of fruit that it dries on the outside all the way hard, but when you open it up on the inside, there is still moisture on the inside, and that's not going to come out easily because when it's completely covered, when it's completely closed on all sides, the moisture can't escape, which is why most fruit is recommended to be cut in half or to be sliced, that you don't do things whole like berries, that you want to make sure that you poke the skins, that you break the skin in some fashion. Like with tomatoes, it's best recommended that you at least cut them in half. So what's going to happen is that there's these couple of pieces that are like this. We're going to go ahead and just keep as they are because we like them a little softer, but they are going to be stored in the refrigerator. That way, we've got about 3 or 4 days to eat these, and they're going to be fine. But for these, they'll get stored just like with the other ones, just like they are. Leathery, hard, ready to go. Let me show you how I'm going to store these and we'll be all done. Okay, here's our storage solutions. Our bits are going to be here for the next time I need to go ahead and make some fruit powder. They're going to store that way. These are our prunes, prune-like plums that I've dried. These are going in the refrigerator because they're just the soft point that we like. They're not for storage because they are just a little too soft, but that's how we like these. So they'll be eaten within probably 3 days. At the most. I don't think they'll last that long. And then here are my slices. Now normally I would keep them in a larger jar, but I'm doing it this way for this because I'm about to have to take pictures for the blog post, so I'm just going to do them this way. This is my conditioning jar that I'm going to be doing because these are for storage. Yes, we'll be snacking out of them, but they're going to be going onto the shelf. We need to condition these before we actually put them away for long-term storage. What that means is I'm going to be taking this jar every day and shaking it up to make sure that nothing is sticking, to allow the moisture to combine into all the pieces equally, because you don't want one piece that's really wet, the rest of them to be dry, and then that wet one begin to form mold in your jar. So it allows the moisture to distribute evenly amongst all the pieces. You can check for things like mold to make sure that they weren't that they didn't have moisture that you weren't expecting. And then if you notice that there's either moisture forming on the side or that things are just sticking really badly, then you put it back in your dehydrator and dry some more. So there you go, 3 ways to dry a plum.